It's another beautiful Friday. You know how we do it on your favorite TV show, PM Personality Profile. My guest tonight, he's a lawyer with a little over 25 years experience at the bar. He is actually the first ever lawyer to be produced by the Zwarungu town of the Bolgatanga East Constituency. He is a former Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. He's a former law lecturer at the Law Faculty of the University of Ghana, Legon. Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Ayine. He's currently the Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga East Constituency. Good to see you, Honorable.
Welcome. Now we don't shake hands.
We don't.
Welcome to my humble abode.
Good to see you, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Aisha, for coming.
Welcome.
Olanso.
I don't know what to say.
That's whom I want. Mami Anso.
Mami Anso.
Mami Anso.
Great.
I'm also doing well.
Yeah. I can see you've had some rest. At least Parliament is on recess.
That is so. We went on recess about 2 weeks ago. So the first order of business for me was to rush to the constituency to see how everyone is faring, whether the grounds are shaky or not. And then after a bit of doing some rounds in the constituency, I then came back to attend a minority caucus workshop on team building, which took place in the Volta region in Ho. We came back, I think, on Sunday night, and I'll be off to the constituency again tomorrow.
It's very important.
Yes, I didn't have the opportunity to thank them.
After the
elections.
So
I'll be doing what we call a thank you tour, going from community to community to say thank you for voting for me for voting for the National Democratic Congress.
It's very important that 2024 is just around the corner. But I also admit that the first sitting of the first session of the 8th Parliament has been fireworks. We've seen a lot of drama. We've seen accusations and counter-accusations. How would you describe the first meeting which just ended?
Well, I think you use the appropriate word, fireworks.
Yes.
Fireworks in the sense that it was very eventful.
Yep.
We came into this parliament with a lot of expectations. We, won a number of seats. Very close to the number that has been won by the MPP. In fact, the prediction was that we're going to have the majority in Parliament. So we came into the 8th Parliament with a lot of expectations, with people thinking that matters were going to be run differently, and our role as an opposition was going to be redefined in the sense that we had the requisite numbers to be able to, hold the government accountable. And then in some cases, especially with respect to the nomination hearings and the approval of, ministerial nominees, the minority didn't do a very good job in communicating its position. And this is because somehow or another, the impression was given to the Ghanaian electorate or the Ghanaian populace generally that the minority was in a position, to withhold approval of nominees. Okay, but numerically, that is not possible because the approval is granted on the basis of a simple majority. And, if you look at the situation in terms of numbers in Parliament, the reality is that the MPP currently has 138, members. We tend to think, of the 137 formula because of the one independent candidate. Okay, but the second deputy speaker is from the heartland of Ashanti, and he was an MPP, member of Parliament before he went independent. So realistically, nobody should expect him to go against the wishes of the MPP in Parliament. So they have 138, and so even if it came to a floor vote on each of the nominees, there was no way, if all things were equal, that we would be the ones, withholding approval.
To
So
decide.
we should have communicated that very clearly from the beginning to lower expectations,
Yeah.
especially of our, rank and file. We didn't do that, and they expected that we were going to withhold approval, and then all of a sudden, we even had a situation where our members crossed over and voted for some of the nominees, and it just, sent our heads spinning.
Yeah.
And I think that is what has caused the fireworks to explode in the first session. But I am sure we'll come back with cooler heads, and I'm sure expectations would have been lowered after what happened. So,
well, we're expecting that the second meeting will be a bit cooler, like you say. But let's talk about you as a person, Dominic Akuritinga Ayine. A lot of people admire you, your depth knowledge of the law, your composure, and how you always try to make politics look clean, even though they say it's a dirty game. What's the meaning of Akuritinga Ayine?
Okay, so I was born actually and named after my great-grandfather, Akuritinga. And my grandfather is Ayine, and so I took his name as my surname, but he named me after his father.
Okay.
Now, Kuri in my dialect means hoe, the farming implement.
Okay.
And then Tenga is F.
Okay.
Okay, so we come from a farming stock.
Okay.
We come from a background of farmers, and my great-grandfather was reputed, to be the biggest landowner in Zorongo.
Okay.
And we grew up hearing stories about him as a great farmer, and then also as a cattle, a rancher, and so on and so forth. So I think that is where it comes from. Ayine is God. Okay. So Ayine is like Inyami. Is the Frafra version of Inyami.
Okay.
So basically that is what the names name means.
Akuritinga has a relation with farming.
Yes, it does.
Which is your family treasure, if
very
I may
much,
put it
very
that
much.
way. Wow,
yeah.
you were born in Zwarongo, right?
Yes, I was born in Zorongo. I was born in somewhere in January 1966. Okay. And I say somewhere because, I did not know my birth date until I was going to secondary school.
Okay.
All right. Actually, it was when I was going to take the entrance exam to Notre Dame Seminary Secondary School. Okay. And then our parish priest, Reverend Father Brown, brought us, the forms to fill, for sitting the exam. Then I took the forms, and there was a column for birthday. Okay. Okay. My mother was a petty trader in the Zorongo market, so I went to her and I said, "Oh, I need my birthday." She said, "I mean, how do you expect an illiterate woman to remember a date?"
But I'm told they used to write it.
Well, yeah.
Walls.
So she told me that I was born a month before Nkrumah's overthrow. Okay. That was what she, could remember. Okay. All right. But then my father was a long distance truck driver. Okay. So, and he was a bit more, he went to night school actually. So growing up, he used to listen to radio, and he used to also read newspapers. Okay. Okay, so when he came, I went to him, and then he had a little book apparently that, he used to write down the birthdays
of his children.
Yes, so he gave me my birthday from that little notebook. That's how I got to know my birthday. Wow. So, well, because I was a teenager at the time when I got it, I sometimes tell people that I'm not too sure if he recorded it accurately.
Because it's not coming from your mother.
No, and of course, yes, you know that. And then apart from that too, I didn't have an authentic birth certificate from which I can say with certainty that this is what was issued by the government, hospital, or the registry that I was born on this day. But of course, from my father's notebook, I'm sure there's some level of certainty about my age.
So you don't trust your dad.
Okay. Yes. So I was born in Zorongo. When I was, when I grew up, not going to school, so we used to just play around the market. And then when I was of age, you know, we were made to take the cattle and the sheep and the goats, you know, to graze. So I became a shepherd boy.
Okay.
And I was so happy doing it with my cousins. School was not part of my agenda at all until I was about between 10 and 11.
Okay.
So I was, you know, just a happy little boy running around with goats and sheep and cattle. And one day I went to the catechist. You know, the Catholic church is very close to my house. So this gentleman, Paul Akuritinga, he was, you know, the catechist taking care of the outstation church. So he asked me that, how come that the rest of my friends, you know, go to school and I'm not in school? Because at the time I started, you know, I started friendship with a number of people in the community, a number of,
like
you know, at my age mates in the community, and they were all going to school. So he asked me this question, and then I just told him, I said, I didn't have school uniform. That was actually just a spontaneous answer, but it was a lie. I had never thought about going to school.
Okay.
So, you know, about 3 days later, if I remember very well, he came to our house with school uniform and told my mom that when he asked me about school, why I was not going to school, I said I didn't have school uniform. So he's brought me a school uniform. Now, how he got my size, you know, and so on, I didn't know, but he just brought me a school uniform. So,
and it
fitted. Yeah, it fitted. So I took it, and then I had no option, and then I went to school. It's a long story, but I went to the nearest school, which is Adakura Primary School.
And who paid for it?
No, that time in school
it was free.
It was free. You just needed to walk in and write your name.
My goodness.
It was free. So when I went there, the teachers saw my age. They couldn't put me in P1, so they took me to P2, and the pupils just started. They burst out laughing. You know, they were calling me grandpa, class 2 father. You know, so I became so, you know, crestfallen. I didn't know what to do with myself because I had become, you know, because Paul Akuritinga did this, I mean, act of generosity.
Yes.
I didn't want to disappoint him. Okay, so I became interested in school, and here I was. They were teasing me that I'm school grandpa, you know. So I came and I told my mom about it, and then my father was transferred to Laura. And so my mother told him that, look, it's better to take him to Laura where people do not know him, and because he's now becoming interested in going to school. So my father took me there. That's where I met the Dr. Benkumbo for the first time. Okay. Because my father worked with the Irrigation Development Authority. Okay. And Benkumbo's father was, I think, the district manager of that place. So we stayed in the same you know, quarters, you know, the same area built by the IDA. Okay. And so I went to Laura Muslim Primary School, went P3 there, then P4, and came back to Zorungu to continue from P5. And when I was in middle school, Form 1, I took the entrance exam to Notre Dame and qualified. Okay. You know, after just a short period of, you know, attending primary and middle school, I managed to qualify to go to Notre Dame.
So you were actually intelligent and you were wasting your talent.
I think so. One of my, you know, adult friends, Francis, you know, he is a reverend brother now. He actually said, after, I mean, I told him my story, he said, if I hadn't gone to school, my intelligence would have been wasted. Definitely.
Yeah. So both your parents are from Zorungu?
Yes, both my parents are from Zorungu.
They hail from Zorungu. Yes. Tell me how you grew up loving spacious environment, and you say it has a relation to how you grew up.
Yes, you know, when I was growing up, okay, there was a windstorm that destroyed the family house. And so when the aftermath of the windstorm, yeah, one of our uncles, you know, offered my mother one room in a house that he had built for renting. So he offered her that place. You know, we thought it was going to be a temporary place, but we stayed there. Myself, my mom, and my 3 siblings stayed in that place for years. I mean, as for so long as I can remember. I think we moved there somewhere around 70, must have been around 77. Okay, and we did not leave that place until I think about 85 thereabouts. Okay. You know, so we're cramped in the place, and it got very uncomfortable for me, and I was always, you know, not looking forward to going home to sleep. So sometimes I slept in the market. Wow. Yes, there was a particular Pito bar, which was very popular, Zenkubai, you know, which had benches, and there was, you know, space there. We could just put the benches there. We used to play in the market. My house is not far away from the market. So anytime I felt, you know, that I wanted to sleep, I wanted to sleep out, I would just put the benches together and sleep at Azenkuba, and there were other people living in the place, so it wasn't dangerous to sleep there. And then in the morning I would get up, go home, and then take a bath, and then go to school. Just to avoid. Yes, just to avoid having to be cramped in you know. So I grew up always dreaming of houses, always dreaming of big spaces, always dreaming of, you know, secure housing and so on. Okay, so I mean, as I told my architect one day that I don't think I'll ever stop building. Well, I mean, once I have money, I always build. Oh, because yes, because I really, it's a fixation that I have, and it has translated into something about love of architecture. Okay. So this morning when I woke up, I got an article on the architectural history of the Bolga Regional Library. And then that was what I read, you know, before I took my breakfast. Okay. Yes, yes.
Which school did you attend in Laura when you had to join?
Yes, that was so, okay. So from Laura Muslim Primary School, I came to Tongobio Primary, you know, in Zorungu, where I did primaries 5 and 6. Then I went to Adakra Middle School, you know, where I did, you know, the first years of middle school, before I then wrote the entrance exam to Notre Dame. So I went to Notre Dame Notre Dame Minor Seminary from 1980-81 academic year to 1986. June 1986 was when I did my ordinary levels GCE. Then when I went to Tamale Secondary School to do the 6th form, I actually wanted to come to Achimota. You know, but of course I got good grades. You know, I missed distinction by 1. So at the time I could have come into Achimota comfortably. However, I got a pass in mathematics and not a credit. So when I followed up to Achimota, they said because of the pass in mathematics, they were not willing to take me into Achimota Secondary School. Luckily, the headmaster of Tamale Secondary School picked my 6th form card and then gave me admission. And that is how I ended up with Tamale Secondary School.
How did you feel when you were told you had admission to Tamale School, even though you had not chosen Tamale Secondary School?
It was very depressing news. It was very depressing news because, you know, yes, Tamale Secondary School is a great school. I mean, it's one of the great schools in the north and so on. But I was looking beyond, you know, Tamale Secondary School. I mean, to schools like Achimota. You really wanted to come to Accra. You know, not Accra as such, but you see, Achimota had produced a lot of great men that we read in history, Kwame Nkrumah, Agri, and the rest of them. So I thought that it was a path to greatness, probably the easiest path to greatness. So I wanted to come to Achimota, but you know, God knows why I didn't get Achimota. So, yeah.
Definitely. And tell me about school experience, apart from 10-year-old boy being teased as class 2 papa, class 2 father. I mean, after that moment, how was the school experience like? I'm sure you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. I actually never looked back. And then somehow, ironically, turned around to hate being a shepherd boy. So when I started schooling, I had to actually fight with my uncles. One of them, I mean, may his soul rest in peace, Alanaba, was always on me. He wanted me to take the cattle, and I always fought him, on that. So I never looked back, and I enjoyed school. I enjoyed reading. I wasn't very good with figures, but I was very, very good with, literature, French, and so on. I also had a very retentive memory. So those days we used to use the word chew. Yes, but I wasn't really the chew and pour type. I was very analytical, but I could retain whatever I read. Okay, so for instance, when we were in Notre Dame, we acted a play, The Gods Are Not to Blame, by Rotimi.
Yes.
All right, I learned the book by rote from page 1 when you start with the drama, the scenery, and those things, to the last page.
Wow.
Yes, so I could actually, whilst people were on stage reciting their lines, I could actually correct them without even looking into the book. Wow. I mean, the lawyer Tadiosori is my witness because he acted that play with me, and he was one of the sub characters who acted a play with me, and I mean they were really amazed. So I enjoyed school very much, and then up to a point I then became very antisocial.
Okay.
Yes, because whereas anytime
you prefer to spend time with your books.
Yes. So anytime we came home from Notre Dame or Tamale Secondary School and so on, and then those days, students, come home, they want to show off, one or two things that they had learned from school, and impress the girls who were in other schools and so on. I wasn't interested in that. I always locked myself up in the room to read ahead of the semester or that is in the term. Okay, and I had a habit of reading certain books over and over again, and sometimes when I did that, I could retain a lot of the material. So I just kept reading, and I was a bit antisocial. I didn't actually become very social. I didn't mix again until I came to law school.
Okay.
That was when I started mixing. I met friends like lawyer Justina Menuvo, who was the EC's lawyer in the last election petition.
Okay.
And we used to go to Lifeline and other places, and then it was quite interesting. It was a change environment for me.
Tell me about some of the challenges as a young student at in secondary school, Notre Dame, and then finally in Tamale Secondary School, Tamasco.
Well, some of the challenges for me were economic and financial. I mean, I come from a poor background, and so even though Notre Dame, the fees were not very expensive, my parish priest had to pay for me. So Reverend Father Brown, whose picture actually is in my lounge, I don't know whether you noticed when there's a picture of a Catholic priest, a white man, he's Irish. So he paid my fees, in Notre Dame for me.
Wow.
And then also, of course, unlike other students who used to come with a lot of gari and shito and those things, I used to have an empty chop box. But it didn't bother me so much.
So how did you survive?
I ate the dining hall food. And then also
the soup that you can see your face inside.
Notre Dame was kind of different because we're not too many, and then the Catholic Church provided a lot of support to the school, so the food was reasonably good. Looking back, it was far better than the food in Tamale Secondary School. Tamale Secondary School was awful, but I met a number of friends there who supported me, so that was good.
Okay. Nice one. So at the university now you started mingling and you read law.
Yes.
Let me ask you, I mean, when you started enjoying school, did you ever think of becoming a lawyer, or how did that thought come about that I want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, to be honest with you, in Notre Dame, in Notre Dame, and even before, I mean, just because we had this interaction with Father Brown, I actually wanted to become a Catholic priest.
Okay.
That was the only thing that as a young boy, after I started, Notre Dame Form 1, I made up my mind I was going to become a Catholic priest. So probably by now I would have been a cardinal or an archbishop, But somewhere around the time I was in Form 3, then I met lawyer Ambrose Derry.
Okay.
At that time, I think this was around 83, 84. Ambrose had just come out of, law school as a young lawyer. And then I met him. His junior brother, Patrice Lumumba, was my friend. Okay, we used to attend student meetings together. So, Lumumba introduced me to Ambrose. And that day, Ambrose was wearing a black trousers, a black shoe, and then a white long sleeve shirt. And then it was rolled, he rolled the sleeves, and then I can still remember, and I saw a beautiful watch he was wearing. Okay. And then that was when he asked me, he said to me, Lumumba told him that, this is my friend Dominic, one of the young students in our student association, and he said, Dominic is a bright young man. Okay. Then Ambrose said, what will you want to become when you grow up? So I just looked at him. He said, you are in Notre Dame. You want to become a priest? And then I said, yes. He said, no, become a lawyer. All right? So we just laughed about it. And I walked away. And that was where, for the first time, the idea of becoming a lawyer, was planted into my mind. And then when I went back to school, still I was, more or less tending towards becoming a Catholic priest. So at the end of Form 5, I wrote an application to the major seminary to be admitted to become a Catholic priest. Okay. And then, the bishop advised that I should go to sixth form before I come. All right. So then another long story about my life started. I went to sixth form, and before I could complete lower six, my girlfriend gave birth to my first son. So
you wanted to be a Catholic priest?
Yes, and then I experimented, and the experiment, I hope Ross is not listening, the experiment went wrong, and then so he got born, and then
my goodness.
I told myself that if being a priest is actually a calling, this is a sign from God that I should not become one. So that was how my priestly ambitions ended. Yes. And so I was left with no option but to become a lawyer. Okay. And I am, yes.
Wow. So at the University of Ghana, how was it like? And
yeah, university life was very, very, very interesting. First of all, you had freedom that you never had when you were in secondary school. And I think that was very unique. Okay. The fact that you could decide whether you wanted to attend lectures, whether you wanted to attend tutorials, what you wanted to do with your life. Okay, that was more or less like an indirect way of ushering you into adulthood. Okay, but I was very well brought up in school. Notre Dame, it was a regimented, program. Okay, so you had to go to these classes. You had to go to siesta. You sleep. and even up to now. Okay, but for this interview, I would have slept before going. Waking up. Waking up to work.
Part of
so yes. So when I came to the University of Ghana, that was the first thing that struck me: the freedom that you could go to town without an exit and so on and so forth. So that was really very good. Then also, unlike secondary school, there was a larger pool of persons from all walks of life, because our schools were mostly regional in nature. You barely met people from other regions. All right, but in the university, almost every region had some representation in terms of the student population and so on. And then lectures were kind of different. It wasn't like in the secondary school where you were to be taking notes, and so things were dictated to you, and then you had to basically comply with what the teacher is saying. So university life was very, very, very interesting. One interesting thing that happened, when I was coming to university, I thought that you know, they said we were going to be giving student loans.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought the student loan, I thought that the student loan was going to be disbursed upon arrival. You know, so I had very little money coming from Zorungu, and so when we got to the gate, went up to Commonwealth Hall. I was admitted Commonwealth Hall. Yes. So then we got to the hall. The following day, I got up and then I made inquiries about where we were going to get the loan disbursed to us. So they said no. SNIT will come with the forms. We had come in September, and they said until October, SNIT will, come, okay, which meant that we will not get the loan until somewhere around November or December.
Wow.
And I had very little money with me, you know. So then, then what happened was that I went to the whole, our JCR president, Mr. Robert Tego. So I went to Robert Tego and I said to him, I said, look, I came from Zorungu, I don't have money. And I'm told that a loan is going to come in November. I can't wait. So can they lend me money, the JCR, you know. So, but I mean, this is really, I mean, he told me, he said, look, this is not something we do.
Yeah.
So, and as JCR president, I can't give you money from the JCR.
Coffers.
Coffers. So he then said we should go to Professor Kumado.
Okay.
So went to Professor Kumado, who was a hall tutor. And then Prof Kumado said, so Dominic, because I was doing law, he knew me. He said, Dominic, okay, so if you don't repay this money, what happens?
He was teaching tort, right?
Yeah, tort, and
law
then,
of tort.
yeah, law of torts, and then constitutional law.
Okay.
And I said, I looked at him and I said, Prof, I mean, at that time, he wasn't Prof, but I said, I would definitely pay. So he told Tego, well, go and give him the loan. So Robert Tego gave me a loan. And then when the Senate loan came, and I went and queued at the GCB and got my portion, I went up and paid up.
I'm sure you used all to pay up the debt.
No, not necessarily.
You had some left?
It was interest free, so I had something left,
okay,
which I actually used to. I bought my first tape recorder, the cassette, you know, recorder from that.
Okay.
So I could listen to. I like listening to BBC and Voice of America at the time. Okay. So I bought a tape recorder that had a radio, and then I could listen to music and listen to you know, radio.
So you were a vandal.
Yes, I am a vandal,
a bad
and
boy.
A proud one.
Were you a bad boy?
No, not as such. I wasn't a bad boy in the sense in which people think of vandalism. I was actually, you know, a very moderate person. If anytime there was confusion in the hall, we were the ones who tried to settle, you know, matters, who tried to talk to people to see reason. So I became the hall secretary in 1992, and because of my moderate nature, a lot of people liked me in the hall. However, they thought that I was not very supportive of vandalism. Okay. And my president, then Saki, we used to, I can't remember his actual name, but we used to call him Saki Main Man. So they said Saki and I were betraying vandalism because actually it was about money for alcohol. You know, they said we were not releasing enough money for the chief priest outfit to be buying alcohol
for Father
Bacchus. So because of that they wanted. So they actually started a petition, and then they impeached us. Okay. Now the person who led our petition is my great friend. We call him Zorich. Okay. He's the chief Ajiman. He's the chief executive now of the Ghana Tourism.
Oh, okay. Akwesi
Ajiman. Yes, he was the one who led the impeachment. And you know, I remember distinctly. We went to the JCR for the impeachment hearing. So they had a judicial committee, which was headed by a classmate of mine, Charles Beckley. And then, so I led the arguments on behalf of those of us who were under impeachment. And so I made very sound legal arguments about why, under the constitutional law of the JCR, they could not impeach us. The grounds were not, you know, I mean, impeachable grounds and so on and so forth. Cited, you know, authorities and so on. And then Akwesi Ajiman, who wasn't a law student then,
Okay.
was a lawyer for the chief vandal's outfit. Can you imagine? and then all that he came and said, and I think some law students had given him a bit of apport. He came and said, Dominic is citing the Constitution of the JCR.
Okay.
But if the Constitution of the JCR is anything to go by, the Farabacus, the law of Farabacus, is the GRU norm, right? Is a norm that is superior to the Constitution. And then everybody said, yeah, they were clapping for him, and I knew we had lost, because that argument didn't make sense. And yet they were applauding him, and then when the vote was taken, they voted that were to be impeached. Okay. So they removed us from office. Very interesting. Wow. Yeah. So, but Zorich and Akwesa Juman and I are very good friends. Okay. We put that behind us and we became very good friends. Wow. Yeah.
But one thing, even before we got to the university, I wanted to find out from you, when you went experimenting and it cut short your dream of becoming a Catholic priest, how did your parents take this? And at that time, the Catholic priest who paid your fees, how did he feel about this?
Oh, first of all, unlike now, my parents really didn't take an interest in, my future career. Okay. So I didn't share my ambitions with them. Okay. I think my mother got to know, by the way, my father died in 1987 before I finished sixth form. So I cannot say, for instance, what is this, but he actually, told a friend of his who was a magistrate that he wanted me to be a lawyer. Yes, wow. he mentioned that too. So I think he would have been opposed to my becoming a priest.
A priest.
My mother has a cousin, Reverend Father David, who is a Catholic priest.
Okay, she would have supported that.
Yeah, so she would probably have supported me because, then Father David was also very helpful to us, growing up. So they would have supported, she would have supported me.
Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, my guest tonight, and we've been having some very interesting conversation about his growing up. When I returned from this break, remember, he's a lawyer with over 25 years experience at the bar. You'll be telling us about his experience at the Ghana School of Law. Also, he had further studies in Michigan and in California?
Yes, Stanford.
Great. He'll be telling us more about that after this break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to PM Personality Profile. My guest tonight, Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, and we've been having some insight into his growing up. Doc, thanks so much for your time. Now let's start with your days at the law school, which has become almost impossible for people to enroll into. Thankfully, last year the enrollment figure rose to about 1,045. Well, hopefully let's see what this year brings about. But how would you describe your days at the Ghana School of Law?
Yeah, at our time, there was automatic entry. So you simply needed to obtain either the BA in law and then another subject, like history or political science.
You were lucky.
And or the LLB, which I did. And then once you pass the basic subjects, constitutional law, tort, contract, and so on, Ghana legal systems were automatically admitted to the Ghana School of Law. And so I was admitted to the Ghana School of Law in 1993. That was September. I entered September 93. And we were a cohort of about 60 from the University of Ghana, because we're 40 LLB students and then 20 BA students who, were students for that particular year. And some of the notable ones are the chairperson of the EC. She was actually my classmate and, and very good friend.
Madam
Jean Mensah, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, so...
And you went battling her in court?
Yes, for good reason, and I mean, on the basis of principle. I mean, it's nothing personal.
Okay.
And yeah, so we you know, the law school wasn't residential, so we had to stay elsewhere and then come to school. In my case, I stayed in a box room in Commonwealth Hall. I managed to get, you know, the not the hall itself, but those who used to, the porters, what they call the porters, those who were at the entrance to the hall, and they were the ones who saw to us having our keys and so on. So I got the porters to give me a box room. So I was living in Commonwealth Hall whilst attending law school. Okay. Yeah, it was quite stressful, but also very interesting. We were, as the place is known as Makola, we're in the middle of the Makola market, you know, and we used to be in classes whilst the hawkers are trying to advertise their goods and so on. The thing that I liked about the law school at the time, it was run by a very professional director, you know, Mr. S.Y. Bimpombuta, Dr. S.Y. Bimpombuta of blessed memory. You know, a deeply committed person to professional legal education. And so...
I think constitutional law, right?
Yeah, he did law of interpretation. He was mostly law of interpretation. And so, yes, we had very good lecturers who taught us, and they were very practical at the time. And then, of course, because the courts are close by, some of us who were very much interested in law practice used to run to the courts anytime we had nothing to do. I would go to the Supreme Court and then listen to proceedings. It was true that I got to be friends with Justice Taylor, whom I later on worked. Justice Jane K. Taylor, who was a justice of the Supreme Court. He subsequently became a consultant to the Institute of Economic Affairs, and I was his research assistant for many years. So I used to, you know, travel from Commonwealth Hall to the Institute of Economic Affairs, and then from there to the to the law school. So it was quite a stressful experience, but at the end of the day, I was very happy with the learning. These days, and as I said, it was very practical. So we had a very experienced, legal practitioners teaching us. So Kwame Tete, for instance, Mr. Kwame Tete, was for many years. He had about 30 years experience at the time he was teaching us, and he was teaching us family law. Then we had the famous E.D. Combe, you know, who was a guru in civil procedure, who taught us civil procedure and so on. So I like the practical aspect of law school, but it was also quite stressful because the infrastructure was poor, and we used to sit under the tree, you know, no place to even rest before the next lecture and so on. But all the same, it was a good experience for me. Yes.
So you became the first ever lawyer?
Yes, at the time I was called, in 1995, in October 1995, when I was called to the bar, I became the first, you know, lawyer from my hometown, Zorongo. And by the way, I'm very proud of my hometown. I love Zorongo to bits. I always, if you ask my kids, they'll tell you. I can't stop talking about Zorongo, and I always run there. So I became his first lawyer, and then
how was the feeling like?
Interestingly, when on that day when I got called, the reality of my being the first lawyer dawned on me. But I had also read sufficient legal history to know that other places, you know, had lawyers in the 19th century. And the case of Saba, Mensa Saba, became a lawyer in the, I don't know whether it was even in the 18th century or the late 19th century. And we had people like Van Leer and Co., who from the Volta region, who were also lawyers, you know, in the 19th century. So it's just that, you know, Zorongo, for some reason, lagged behind in that department. And so I happen to have been the one who became the first, you know, lawyer. And I'm proud of that record. After me, we had Amina, you know, Abubakar, who happens to also be my cousin. She's a partner of ENS Africa. So she became the second lawyer. And then another cousin of mine of blessed memory, Carl Hokadongo, became, you know, the third lawyer. So you but then we opened the gates.
You became, yeah.
Yeah, we opened the gates. So now we have quite a number of people from my hometown.
I'm sure the girls will be falling at your feet.
I don't think so. I haven't seen any yet. Maybe they're yet to come.
At that time?
No. I was probably too I was too reserved.
Okay.
You know,
to even
that,
notice.
If anybody wanted to fall, if they didn't physically fall, I wouldn't notice. So that was a problem.
My goodness.
Sure. Yeah. So
and so in few months, candidates will be going around to write for the entrance exams for the law school. What are your expectations?
Well, Aisha, I have been an advocate for the expansion of professional legal education. Actually, I am working on a bill now on professional legal education that is, you know, geared at making it possible for as many lawyers to be trained as possible. Okay, and the whole idea is that when someone has an LLB, they should be able to sit for the bar after some professional training offered by their own institution. So we no longer going to have, if that bill becomes law, we're not going to have the Ghana School of Law being a monopolistic institution that, you know, can only admit. It may be able to admit people and do, professional legal training, but it is not going to be the only, entity if the bill becomes law. The idea is that we can model it along the lines of the United Kingdom, Australia, and other common law jurisdictions, Canada, and so on, whereby the bar exam, okay, is open to all persons who have the, you know, the basic law degree. All right. The proposal is going to be that the various institutions should offer some clinical legal education that is practical, that teaches the very practical subjects like civil procedure, criminal procedure, you know, and so on. And then after that, people should be allowed to take the bar exam, and those who qualify are called to the bar. All right, so we can have a national bar exam that is open to everyone, so that there's equality of opportunity for everybody. That is my vision for the future of professional legal education in Ghana.
Let's talk about your profession as a lawyer. You've come a long way.
Yes.
Over 25 years is no mean achievement. How would you describe your journey at the bar?
Well, my journey has been quite eventful, and I have to thank God for the people that He put, you know, along the way to hold my hand, and I, with sadness, I have to mention Kojo Bensenchel, you know, who was buried just a few weeks ago. When I became a lawyer, I first went to a law firm called Lai & Co, where I did my pupillage. I wasn't really very impressed with the system at Lai & Co. And then I left there and joined, you know, my very good friend Charlotte Osei. The two of us joined, you know, Bensenchel, Lecha, and Mateden. And then Kojo Bensenchel, took to liking me because he thought I was bright and also hardworking. And he taught me the ethics of lawyering and you know, the what it means, you know, to be a good lawyer and to serve your clients with distinction. And so I'm very grateful to him. But for him, I don't know whether I would have had the grounding that I had to be able to now practice on my own. I remember distinctly telling my son that Kojo and I used to work with Esankoma and Maxwell Opoka Jiman and Co. Where in Osu we used to work, and then Kojo would come and drop me at 2 a.m. at Commonwealth Hall. He would take me all the way, and I was a teaching assistant at Legon, and he would come and drop me at 2 a.m. and by 6 a.m. he's in the office. You get to the office and he's there.
Wow.
You know, so I used to, I mean, he taught me the ethics of, you know, I mean, hard work and how you can hone your skills as a lawyer and so on. So I was lucky in that you know, respect. And also when I started my career as a law lecturer, there were a number of people who I met at the Faculty of Law who were really very great inspirations to me. You know, Mr. Prosa, not Mr. Ofosuama.
Okay.
You know, I have a very interesting story. I need to tell that story, I mean, to you. Ofosuama, when I was in first year at the law faculty,
okay.
I was kind of quiet and timid in class. Okay. I couldn't, you know, speak up. Okay. Even now, when I'm in the midst of, it's a crowd of strangers, you know, I tend to be a bit, you know, less confident in beginning to talk. Okay. All right. It's only when I find my feet, then I will be myself.
Yeah.
So in my first year, I never talked in class. So when we came back from the first year, Officer Ama called me into his office, and he said, "Where do you come from?" Then something ran through my mind, because people said, "Oh, they said if your father is not a lawyer, you are not allowed to become a lawyer." So I thought he was, headed in that direction. So I said Zorungu. Then he said, "Oh, okay, near Bolgatanga." I said yes. I said, "So how come I have not heard you talk in class?" And I said, "Prof, I don't like to talk in public." And he said, "And you want to be a lawyer, you have to speak up. Yep. Okay, you are such a brilliant young man. Look at your grades. You know, my first year grades were good. Impressive. You know, so he said, look at your grades, and you don't talk in class." So I said, okay. Then he said, "I'm going to be teaching you public international law. Okay. And I'll be calling on you every day." So for his classes, I had to be prepared. Then when he comes, you know, before he, you know, says anything, before he goes, any question he asks, he say, "Where's Dominic? So please answer the question." You know, so that's how he got me to build my confidence in talking in public and so on and so forth. So I'm really very, grateful to him. He was also the person who, even earlier on in my life at the law faculty, told me that he would want me to come back and become a lecturer. So the idea of lecturing, you know, I got from him. Okay. And in fact, he recommended me for scholarship to the University of Michigan Law School. They admitted me, but asked him whether or not they should give me scholarship. And when he wrote, you know, he was that powerful. When he wrote, you know, telling them that they should give me a scholarship, they gave me a full scholarship. My goodness. Yeah. So so I'm really deeply grateful to people like that, you know, who made it, who opened the doors for me.
How was your experience in Michigan and in California?
Michigan was terrible.
And interestingly, you did international economic law.
Yes.
You don't like maths.
No.
How did you end up doing
international economic law? The only time that we did econometrics was when I took a course in law and economics. Okay. Yeah, but that wasn't really deep econometrics, you know. Okay. So yeah, so I did, you know, it's about the economic institutions of the international system, or the, you know, the World Bank, the IMF, you know, and how they regulate the, you know, the international economic environment. Okay. The World Trade Organization, its regulation of the world trading system and so on. So it's more about law and political economy. It's not mathematical as such. So I sailed through very, very well with those courses. Yeah.
What's the single most important reform you want to see in our judicial system or in our justice delivery system?
Well, for me, I think the most important one is the criminal justice system. I think that we need to look into the sentencing regime, because I think that the sentences that are being handed down to persons who commit all kinds of offenses are not justified. They are economically burdensome to the state, to the republic. So I mean, for instance, if someone is caught with a roll of weed, I mean, for God's sake, you don't want to send that person to 10 years, I mean, in hard labor in someone, right? And I've had to defend people. I remember, I won't mention the name, but a young lady who was working with DHL, a parcel came through, she processed the parcel, not knowing that the parcel was, had a weed under it with chocolate at it, on top of it. So the person came and was pretending to send chocolate to the UK, not knowing that it was weed the person was sending. So when along the line it was discovered, she was arrested. The Nigerian guy who came and sent the parcel ran away, and then I had to defend her. And eventually she was given, I think, was it 15 years, with hard labor.
Wow.
So for me, I think those are things that we need to look at. I mean, the sentencing regime should not, it should be reformed so that it is less burdensome on the republic, and it is also not destructive of the lives of young people in particular. I mean, especially young offenders who are offending for the first time and so on. I think we need to look at that very carefully.
I mean, recently we've all been heartbroken that 2 teenagers killed a 10-year-old boy for rituals. I mean, for ritual purposes. Yeah. How does this news come across to you?
Well, what they did is a crime, right? It's the crime of murder. It was premeditated. They planned it. They took the young boy, their colleague, to the hideout. He helped them to dig the hole, and then they ended up murdering him in cold blood. So for me, it's a crime. But so I mean, in that sense, they are guilty of the commission of the offense of murder. But we need to also look at the social and economic circumstances, that more or less dictated their commission of the offense. These are very innocent boys. At their age, I think they have been, adulterated. Their minds have been so much adulterated into thinking that ritual murder is going to propel them into, a wealth and then, a higher social status and so on. There's a need for us to look at the possibility of reforming them, all right, of getting them. Yes, they should suffer some consequence, but come to think of it, do we want these young men to be hanged, or do we want them to be sentenced to spend the whole of their life in jail, or do we want to reform them so that in future, they can become productive persons in society? And I would opt for a system of reform that can get them to become productive in our society. But I don't think we should condemn them to death. I don't think we should condemn them to life imprisonment.
What's your specialization?
Yes, I specialized in international economic law as so basically international trade and investment law, and that was what I was teaching for many years at the law faculty. So a lot of in fact, in Parliament, I don't think there's any parliamentarian who has more students in the chamber than myself.
But of course, back to the 2 teenagers, many think that the issues are bigger than just brainwashing these children to get themselves involved in this. For you, and this is not the first time you're hearing of this kind of things. I mean, it's like something that is, it's a phenomenon that is developing gradually. What do you think it's accounting for all of this, and how can we begin to tackle this as a country?
Well, I think if you listen to the discourse on this matter, is basically the emergence of, you know, a certain culture, okay, of of getting people wanting to get rich, you know, quick, and then of course of a media that is not regulating itself in a way that will eliminate, you know, those type of influences. So, for instance, if you have malams and juju people advertising about how they can multiply, you know, money, or they can increase your wealth if certain rituals are undertaken and so on, that I think, you know, is also a very huge contributing factor to what we are seeing now. And I think the media has to take some responsibility for that.
Okay.
Of course, now with social media, it's very difficult to regulate, because if for instance, the juju man or the malam decides to do the advert and post it on WhatsApp and it goes around,
Facebook,
or on Facebook and it goes around, it's not possible for you to, regulate that.
Yeah.
So content regulation to some extent will be needed if we have to deal with this phenomenon that you have rightly identified. Then also we need to get people to understand that hard work pays.
Yeah.
You know, the whole idea that, you know, if you take shortcuts, you will become rich, you know, quicker, and all your economic and financial problems will be solved. You know, that idea should not be sold to anyone, let alone the younger generation. We should teach them the ethics of hard work. We should teach them, you know, discipline and moral rectitude, and how, at the end of the day, we should give examples of people, you know, who have made it,
of people
despite,
like you.
You know, yes, despite starting off, you know, with at the lower ranks of, you know, yes, you know, so if those examples multiply, people will begin to see that their situation is not as desperate, and they will begin to see that if they wait and work hard, they will get, you know, some economic freedom.
Has the state failed us as young people?
Well, in many ways, yes. In many ways, I would answer that question in the affirmative, because you see, for instance, if you have a situation where the state is not actively promoting communal activities that can keep these young people engaged, okay? So, for instance, you roam around, you don't see community libraries anywhere, okay? Yeah. So people don't even have a place where they can go and read. You roam around, you don't even have parks where the young people can go, recreational parks where the young people can go and play football. These young people, if they were engaged in playing football and, you know, basketball and the rest of them, and thinking about how to become football stars basketball stars, I don't think that they'll be focused on making money so quick. Okay, so the state has failed us. Failed young people to the extent that it is not engaged in an everyday effort to reform their lives, you know, or to transform their lives by putting in place social and cultural infrastructure that will allow them, you know, to blossom, that will allow them to grow and then become, this. And I remember this thing, and part of the reason why I was very happy to get this article about the Bolga library, the regional library, is because, you know, when I started going to school, that was one of my hideouts. I used to walk about over 4 kilometers from Zorungu to Bolga Central to go and borrow books, you know, from the library and walk back to go and read. Okay, so it engaged me. And so that is why when I became an MP, one of the first projects that I started was the Zorungu Community Library. Okay. You know, unfortunately, we got to roofing level, and then, as usual, politics has intervened because we lost. GMPC was funding it, and because we lost, at the elections, since 2017, no work has taken place. On it, but it's a modern library that I was constructing that would allow, give young people the opportunity, you know, to go pick a book and read. And I actually have a friend in Australia who promised to give. In fact, the first shipment of books came, but we are still waiting for the library to be completed. So the state has failed in that respect. We need to be actively involved in community activities and community infrastructure that would transform the lives of young people.
Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, he's a doctor, don't forget that. But of course, he is a politician, a good one at that. And when I return from this break, he'll be telling us when the love for politics set in. He wanted to be a Catholic priest, remember? Then something came up, then he became a lawyer. When did he decide to become a politician? Again, to be able to go to Parliament all the time, visit your constituency, defend clients in the court, and many more, you need to be fit. What does he do to keep fit? Does he even have a leisure time? Does he have a World Dominic Ayine Day? All of that when we return from this break. Welcome back to PM Personality Profile. Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, my guest tonight. Doc, let's veer into your political life. And of course, you're a good politician. And when I started, I talked about how you always try to play the game neatly, even though people say it's a dirty game. But when did you develop the love for politics?
That's an interesting question. I actually did not want to be a politician, precisely for the reason that you gave, about politics being a dirty game. But I don't really think we can make it a clean game.
Okay.
You know, it's left to us to be able to do that. But I actually, in terms of my career path, I wanted to retire from the University of Ghana, and after that become a judge.
Okay.
Yes, so the idea, I mean, and that I got the interest in becoming a judge from Justice J.N.K. Taylor, whom I said I worked with, you know, somewhere between 1996 and 1997. And when I think in 2012, I became political in the prior to 2012. I was involved in the activities of the legal, you know, team of the NDC. In the background, as a lecturer, I used to do a lot of research, legal research for the party, and then also take part in the legal team activities and so on. So I was a known NDC lawyer in that respect, or a lawyer affiliated to the NDC.
Okay.
But I never really took part in active political activity. I wasn't attending rallies and so on.
Okay.
Until the case of Ransford France and Attorney General, you know, came up. And, you know, I used to be one of the lawyers who, when Professor Mills was in office and the Honorable Betty Molidrusu was Attorney General, I used to be one of the lawyers young lawyers that she, you know, consulted anytime there was a controversial matter. So when Ransford France and Attorney General was brewing, that was about the creation of the 45 constituencies. And so the party was keenly interested in it because there was a proposal from the Electoral Commission to create the 45 constituencies. The MPP was opposed to it because they thought that the 45, if created, would add to the number of seats that the NDC already had in Parliament. So they were opposed to it. So they used a surrogate, Ransford France, to go to court to stop the creation of the constituencies. And so I went to the Attorney General and I said, it appeared that there was a need for their side to beef up their arguments, because I read their arguments and I didn't think that they were strong enough. But of course, every Attorney General, she wasn't the one writing the arguments. So she had not even reviewed them before they went to, they were filed. So when I told her that, she asked for the reasons, and I told her. Then she said, okay, why don't you go and do a supplementary for us? Okay. But then when I thought of it, I said to myself, no, I'd rather go straight to the court. So I decided to write an amicus curiae brief. Okay. And I went and filed it. And then on the day that the court was going to hear the case, I went and Justice Dateban and Atobuka were, Justice Dateban was presiding you know, with Atuga was on the panel. So when I went to court, I told the court that I had inflicted my thoughts on the court without its leave. And so I was coming to apologize and to ask that they should consider the arguments that I had filed. So they said, okay, then I have to apply for leave. So I applied for leave, and the leave was granted, and then the arguments were adopted. Somehow or another, if you read the case, my arguments were the arguments that won that case. And my arguments were cited, you know, extensively in the judgment of Dateba JSC, as he then was. So, so when we finished, when the case was decided, and the 45 constituency was created. That was when Bolga East constituency was created. So then I started getting calls that, a constituency has been created with Zorungu as the headquarters. You know, why don't you go and run? And I said, me? Go and run for a constituency? Are they kidding me? I said, no. I told them I wasn't interested. Then the people, people were still calling, even here in Accra and so on and so forth. So one day, one of the days, in July of 2012, I woke up early in the morning and I just thought to myself, I said, since you became a lawyer, it's been 17 years, at the time it was 17 years, what have you done for your hometown? You know, what have you given back to the community? Maybe this is the opportunity
for you to
So I said, okay, let me give it a shot. And then I called a number of people, and, you know, I called General Mosquito, I called a number of the party guys and told them, and they said, well, they are excited that I'm interested. So, well, as they say, the rest is history. I went and ran for the primaries. It wasn't easy because I was very naive. I remember my first meeting with the foot soldiers. When we finished, I thanked them and I was moving away, and then one gentleman who was a part of my team, Abu Salfu, he called me aside and he said, hey, they don't just thank them and go. You have to give them money. And I said, give them money? I'm coming to serve them. How do I give them money? Because I'm seeking their assistance too. He said, no, if you don't give them money, forget about these families. So I said, how much? And then he told me the amount. So I went to my car, removed the money, and gave it to him. So I then asked him, I said, so Abu, is this how it's going to be? He said, yes. I said, the little money I brought from Accra is finished. And he said, well, you better look for more money because it is just starting. You know? So it went from one thing to the other and so on. And then, well, I won the primaries. My opponent said I paid more than, he did. But that was how the game was played. You know, but I think I also, because of my track record, people already knew me, and they also knew that I had the clout maybe to be able to help the constituency and so on. So that played on their minds, but the monetary aspect was very taxing for me. So to get back to your question, it was just about trying to give back to my community. So my first term in particular, I utilized my position as Deputy Attorney General very creatively to get projects, you know, to Zorungu. Yeah, so, you know, for the first time, we got the township roads. Zorungu didn't have tar roads before I became NP. So I got a contract from Minister of Roads, and we got a township roads project going. You know, then we got, street lights and so on. Then I built the market where my mother used to, to trade. They had these sheds that were made of wood and grass. You know, so I got a project from the Ministry of Trade that raised all of that to the ground, and then we built a modern market. You know, for the town. You know, so yes, so the first term was very, very productive. If JM had won a second term, and if I had continued to be Deputy Attorney General or to serve in his government, I'm sure I would have done more than I have done so far. But so far, so good. I'm happy that I took that decision in July of 2012 to go back and help, you know, my community. And
here you are, your third term, right?
Yes, this is my third term.
Let's talk about your job as a parliamentarian. How do you feel when people talk about how disappointed they are with parliamentarians, how they've not lived up to expectation, how some of them have been accused of corrupt acts. How do you feel as a member of parliament?
Well, you know, I'm always a student of society and a student of politics. This is not the first time that our society is disappointed with politicians. So yes, there is that aspect of it. But the question is, you know, do we throw up our hands in the air and say that we give up and that nobody, you know, should be engaged in politics? You know, to be fair to my colleagues, I think some of the accusations are most of the time based upon lack of information, most of the time also unwarranted. You know, for instance, if you accuse a parliamentarian of corruption, the parliamentarian doesn't really disperse resources. We don't hold the press. We don't award contracts, right? If, for instance, we are thinking about corruption in the sense that the executive branch brings money to parliament to bribe people in order to be able to approve nominees, okay, that is an accusation. And the question is whether or not it is substantiated. Okay. All right. Yes, it is true that most of the time when these appointment committee hearings take place, you know, allowances are paid. All right. And some nominees, you know, will probably bring something to give to the members of the committee, which I think is a bit unethical. Okay. For me, I think that is unethical. But that has come to be like the practice. Okay. I don't think that it is the case that people negotiated bribes or people asked for monies to be given them in exchange for the approval of nominees. I don't think that is what is happening. But a lot, you know, of speculation, you know, has gone on about why certain nominees were approved and so on and so forth. And I think that is what is fueling the idea that, you know, they took they took money. You see, I'm sure history will probably exonerate, you know, especially our side, because there are certain things that were negotiated behind the scenes. It's not about money. Okay. All right. It's not about, you know, material gains, but there are things that our leadership, you know, cannot talk about. And so the honorable, I pity the honorable minority leader, Harun Idrisu, because I know I'm privy to some of those things that were negotiated behind the scenes. He cannot talk. He can't say that we told, let's say, the Minister of Communication to do A, B, and C before getting approved, right? Because if he says that, and let's say the minister doesn't do it, it backfires politically. And if it is something that was also negotiated behind the scenes, you don't want to come and announce it to the whole world. So you take it from me, there are some things that were, you know, done, okay, not in respect of people like Howard Kumsinenko. If we actually you know, wanted to do that with Howard Kumsin, we would not have taken her to the through the floor vote. All right. But I think that eventually, you know, history will be on the side of the minority. Yes.
Wow. What do you want to see, or what do you hope to see when you go back to Parliament, or what do you want actually changed in the 8th Parliament?
I think the 8th Parliament, Ghanaians expect it to be different. Ghanaians expect us to hold the government's feet to the fire more frequently than we did. The fact is that, unfortunately, most of the decisions in Parliament are by a simple majority. In fact, one of the things that I would have wanted us to do is to change the standing orders, to require a supermajority vote on certain weighty national issues. So, for instance, if you have a government that is borrowing engaged in too much borrowing, all right, and I'm not talking about this, a current government alone, all right, we also had our share of borrowing, all right, but if you have you think that the loans are not, really going to help the Republic, you should require that before approval, you should have a 2/3 majority of members. And if you make that requirement, if that of 2/3 majority approval, it will become difficult for governments to just, at the a drop of a pin, run to the international market to borrow money. Now look at our debt, to GDP, ratio, almost 80%. That is not, sustainable. So I think that is one aspect that we need to change. We need to enact an international economic and business act that makes it possible, for us to scrutinize the loans and the, economic transactions like power purchase agreements and so on in a way that enhances public welfare. We should be more focused on making sure that governments, account to the people more, more diligently. Yes.
I'm sure the family is very proud of what you're doing out there. Were they in support when you wanted to be a politician?
I didn't do a lot of consultation, with the family. I informed, my wife. I talked with the kids, and my senior son in particular, he's like my friend. So we talk a lot about these things. So I talked to him about it. He said it was a good idea, and he's been very, very, very supportive, of my, work as member of parliament.
So 6 boys.
Yes,
one girl.
I have 6 boys and 1 girlfriend.
You must be a tough father to be able to raise 6 boys.
It's not too difficult because they have good mothers also.
Okay.
And once they are, well brought up, I'm very proud of them. They are very well behaved, kids and so on. And
how many of them are towing the line of law, and how many are towing the line of politics?
Okay, so Ross, the senior son, is he just came back from an advocacy exam. Okay. So so very soon, God willing, he will be called to the bar very soon. Okay. The rest of them are studying science, and not very interested in law. I think Mayaba, my daughter, she said she wanted to be a lawyer. Okay. Okay. She said she wanted to be a lawyer, and then one day she told her mom that she has changed her mind. Oh. Because lawyers don't stay at home with their children. So
she should try medicine.
So she's not going to be a lawyer anymore because daddy is not always at home. Oh. So the mom called me, and then I was then in the constituency. So I told her, I said, Mayaba, it's not about the law, it's the politics. So just avoid politics, become a lawyer, and I'm sure you will be home with your husband and your children. All the time. In my case, it's because of the politics. I'm always running to Zorungu, to the constituency and back, and that's how come you are complaining. You are not seeing me. So I told her to leave, not to come into politics, but she should become a lawyer. So I'm hoping that she would also join us to be the 3rd lawyer in the family. So
that would be nice. Yeah. I would have been surprised if you had said none of your children was into law practice, because I've never seen a lawyer whose children are not.
Oh, there are so many of them. There are so many
I'm
of
sure
them.
Maybe they tried and they did not get.
They become very, very. The lawyers that I have met whose children have refused to become lawyers are usually really very sad. So
definitely one of your children must be in. Yes. But of course, after all this running around, constituency, parliament, court, and all that, do you have a leisure time? Do you have some time for yourself?
I used to, but now I don't, unfortunately. I used to have leisure time. I used to do some tennis, play soccer. I used to play soccer at the University of Ghana pitch. Oh, okay. All right. I still have my soccer boots. Okay, let's go on the field then. Then also I like to exercise, so I do some walking from time to time. I can walk from here to the ANC mall. Oh wow! And then take a cab back. So sometimes I just dress in my sporting gear, and then I walk to East Legon. Okay. And then I take a car back. Yeah, so I do exercise.
Okay.
But it's just the time to do it that is not there.
You need to keep fit to do what you do. So definitely. So, but of course, I'm sure you have what you do stuff to relax because you also need that. Do you listen to music?
Yes, I do. I love jazz.
Okay.
Yeah, I love contemporary jazz, and then reggae.
Okay.
we were brought up on reggae music.
Which of them? Lucky Dube or Bob Marley?
Oh, Lucky Dube is one of my favorites.
Okay.
You know, and Bob Marley. You know, those. I don't know whether you know Peter Tosh. You've heard of Peter Tosh?
No.
Marvin Gaye. I mean, not Marvin Gaye. You know, a whole lot of reggae musicians.
Okay.
Yes, so I do listen to reggae. And
which is your favorite among them?
You mean my favorite song?
Yes.
Reggae song?
Yes.
Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. In Zolmu we used to call it "Baby Don't Worry." That's the title we gave it.
Really? That's your favorite?
Yeah, Three Little Birds.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I've actually told my son that if I die, nobody should cry, but they should just play Three Little Birds and take me to the grave. Yeah. So that is it.
They should play Three Little Birds and take me to the grave.
Yeah. So you see the way it begins, don't worry. Then
sing it for me.
Come on. 'Cause every little thing gonna be alright. You don't worry about a thing. 'Cause every little thing gonna be alright. Rise out this morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds beside my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true, saying, "This is my message to you." Worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. You don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright.
I'm sure you used to jump to it, right?
I used to.
Dr. Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, my guest tonight. I'm really grateful that you allowed us into your life. Thank you so much, and we wish you well in all your endeavors. Viewers, thank you so much for watching. Same time next week, God willing, another exciting edition of PM Personality Profile will come your way. My beautiful dress was made by Needle Thread Designs. Call them on 0543-196451, 0543-196451, or visit their showroom at Tesano. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Do stick with Joy News and enjoy the rest of our programs.